It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on Monday, September 9th. The LA Galaxy had 0 games this weekend, but lots of stuff went around the Western Conference, and, of course, the Galaxy getting ready for a midweek matchup against the Colorado Rapids that very well could move them into second, third place, or could see them stay right now outside the playoffs in the 8th position. So a lot of fun, interesting things to talk about, a lot of interest surrounding the LA Galaxy, and as you may have noticed, or maybe you didn't notice, not in the studio is Mr. Kevin Baxter this week. Kevin's on vacation, so in order to fill that seat, which can be oh so hard to fill, we found the tallest guy we could possibly find. We also found the guy who is absolutely not on Twitter. So please welcome back to the show, and hasn't been on for a while, Mr. Larry Morgan, not on Twitter. Larry, how's it going, buddy?
Hi, Josh. Thanks for saying I'm the tallest and not the widest to fill this seat.
No,
seat,
no, absolutely. I'll keep my lips sealed about who that is, Eric. Go ahead.
Well, it's always a pleasure being invited back on the best podcast in the galaxy.
Oh.
Can I get an amen? Sorry.
Amen.
An amen
I love
the comments.
Amen in the comments. I like it. I like your enthusiasm already, too. You're amped up. I don't know if...
Well, I just drank a large Diet Coke, so it's all the caffeine is kind of built up in me, so...
I understand. It makes some sense. You were also out at training today, so we're going to want to talk about that, and we have a whole bunch of quotes from that we can talk about and sort of see where the Galaxy are. And I think, maybe one of the... I don't know if it's something to highlight or if it's something not to highlight, but Zlatan Ibrahimovic not talking to the media.
No, he played a mute today as he walked by. I was not aware that he had not planned to speak. It was kind of disappointing, and oh well, when he doesn't want to speak, he doesn't want to speak.
That's how it works. Yep. Absolutely how it works. So
you certainly can't walk up to him and threaten him to talk, because he'll probably whittle you down to size.
Yeah, I was going to say that doesn't work. That doesn't work. So no, all interesting things. Oh, by the way, I kind of see whenever he gets like this before games, that usually means he's more locked in and focused. Yeah. And so with 6 games remaining on the LA Galaxy schedule, 6 games that'll get played in 26 days, by the way, with 6 games remaining, maybe he's just locked in. Maybe he's in focus mode, which certainly could be the case for Mr. Ibrahimovic.
Or maybe he had to go to the bathroom. I don't know.
Any of those things are possibilities. So we'll certainly see that. Again, the Galaxy playing the Colorado Rapids coming up on Wednesday, September 11th. Coming up Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific time. The game broadcasts on Spectrum Sportsnet. That's where we want to do it, and of course in Colorado at altitude. We'll talk about that game and get you ready for that game here towards the end of the show. But we wanted to start first things first. Still have the T-shirts going on. The 1 at 5 times T-shirt is currently up. It is for sale. $22 gets you the shirt. All those proceeds go to help the show and sort of help us offset any costs. Pay for Larry Morgan's parking. Normal stuff like that. So yeah, please.
$35.
$35.
LAFC.
I know it was a lot. I know there are people who spent a lot more money than you, by the way. So yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you did well.
I almost turned around when I didn't have the parking. I said, "No, I'm here. I'm going to watch the game," and it was well worth it.
It was, and you did a great job filling in for me, who was told if I left, I would probably have to look for another wife. And so as we said at my wedding, and as we often say in my house, 2 is enough. 2 wives is enough, and that's enough for me.
So you officially are moved in, or 80% moved in.
80%, we still got boxes to unpack, but yeah, we're getting there.
Boxes that you didn't know were there, probably.
There's stuff we've moved and since thrown out, so that's always nice when you pay to move it and then throw it out when you get there. So always interesting. But again, go over to cornerofthegalaxy.com, click the shop button right there, and you help support the podcast and the website and all that fun stuff. So please do that when you can. The other thing I want to highlight again is the LA Galaxy podcast schedule coming up, or the Corner of the Galaxy podcast schedule, I should say. We have shows coming up, obviously, on Monday. We have Thursday, but the one that we're still highlighting right now, September 26th, the Thursday live show, is our 700th show. So we're trying to put some stuff together for that. So we will see what that ends up being. And there's still a possibility that we do another live show somewhere before the end of the season, or possibly even during the playoffs. So keep that at the tip of your tongue, or clear off some dates on the weekends maybe coming up once the LA Galaxy get to the playoffs.
That really is amazing. 700 shows.
Yeah, and
I mean, when you started this, could you ever have imagined going to 700 shows?
No. I mean, after the first one, I was like, okay, that's done.
That's enough.
Yeah, they're never going to ask us to do anymore.
Somebody else want to do this? You're more than welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I mean, it's fantastic that you've had the drive and the passion to keep doing this over the years.
It's ludicrous sometimes. I agree. I definitely think
I'm sure your wife thinks that.
No, absolutely, she does. I'll say this, that I happen to know how many shows I've done of those 700, and the answer is 700 because nobody else does them unless I do them, which is kind of a fun thing to be able to say I've been on every single episode of Corner of the Galaxy and I've never missed one.
It's fantastic.
So it's fun, but yeah. Doing 100 shows a year, a little over 100 shows, like 102, 105 shows, something like that. Basically 2 shows a week, and we average 2 shows a week throughout 52 weeks. Is pretty good.
Now, how often have you done these shows, and there have been times when you didn't want to do them?
Oh,
where you
it happened.
really weren't inspired to do them, but you just got through it. And that's the mark of somebody who's really dedicated to his profession, is to somehow push through when times are tough.
Yeah. I've been sick. I've had fevers. I've had the flu. I've canceled shows because I wasn't feeling good too. I'm not going to say that I'm a saint or anything like that. I wasn't. It happens. I mean, certainly, and it happens whenever the Galaxy aren't playing particularly inspiring. Like you want to sit there and you want to say, you really want to talk about this?
Last year, wow.
Or the year before that, 2017, right? I mean,
sure.
All that. Although those ended up actually being different, interesting years for the reason that they were train wrecks. So all of those things sort of combine to usually there's something I can find interest in. And whenever the music starts and whenever the cameras are on or whenever the microphone's on and the recorders are going, there's this, you get the energy and you're like, hey, this isn't so bad. And when you're done, you feel better about it. It's like a workout.
So if you have any say in the matter, there will be another at least 700 shows.
I mean, I told my wife at one point, I go, I want to be the guy in the press box who everybody's like, who is that guy? What does he do, and how old is he? You know, like they do with you.
Sure.
And you know, I want to be that like 80-year-old, 85-year-old guy who's still up there who writes a game recap for every game and publishes it on the website.
I'm not 85, but I'm getting close. You're closer.
You're closer than me.
Yeah.
So that's really where it comes. But yeah, I want to sort of be that. Oh, don't you know who that is? That's Josh Guesman. He's been here forever, and nobody knows what he does anymore. He's kind of weird. You know, that guy. So yeah, that'll sort of be my goal.
Again, it's a fantastic accomplishment, and I really give you a ton of credit.
Thank you, Larry. Well, we give you a ton of credit too, by the way. You've been keeping us above water here as I've been moving and on vacation, and with a little one on the way. I have a feeling that you might have to pick up some slack in the off season too.
Some
slap too.
I mean, it's been my pleasure. I mean, I enjoy the writing. I enjoy going down there. I mean, it's nothing at all for me.
Well, I'll tell you this, that and I've said this before, even, and I'm sure you've heard it on the podcast, sir, but we're extremely lucky to have you. You've been covering soccer in the United States, and certainly in Los Angeles for such a long time. The wealth of knowledge that you bring, and just the understanding that this sport wasn't always as stable as it is right now. I mean,
is this me you're talking about?
Yeah, that is you.
Okay,
I know.
okay.
And you're a dang wordsmith, and it drives me crazy. And I'm like, oh, it would have only taken me 1,500 words to said what Larry Morgan just put in 350 words. That's nice.
I remember one time I think I edited one of your stories, and I think it was like 1,200 words, and it came out the final edition like 800 words.
Yeah. I was like,
it was no problem editing to 400 words, but you've really improved as a writer. I mean, you've gotten a lot better at your own wordsmithing.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I still don't shut up just like I do on this podcast. Anyway, wanted to get that through the podcast schedule. September 26th, 700 shows. We'll have some stuff coming out on that, and we'll figure out what we're doing with that exactly. But we have large plans. We'll just see if we can make them happen. So that's what I'll sort of leave you with. Let's get to the LA Galaxy's weekly schedule as we sort of clean up the beginning of the show here. The LA Galaxy did train today on Monday as we're recording, and then Tuesday they will travel to Denver. So they will travel to Colorado, a trip I just made last night coming back from Colorado. So they'll travel the 2 hours and 10 minutes from Los Angeles to Denver, Colorado, and then make it out to the game on Wednesday at 6 p.m. That game, of course, on Spectrum Sportsnet, played at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, where they have apparently had issues with the plague around there. You heard that, right? They have the plague. The plague is around there. It's in the prairie dogs that are around. It's in Southern California too, and in California. People don't realize this, but yes.
And you've seen games there, right?
I have seen many games there.
What's the atmosphere like?
Usually dead, because they're a very bad team. It is a Dignity Health Sports Park Light. I think they must have been designed by the same people, because they basically have all the same sort of setup, but it's just there wasn't as much.
Yeah.
The upper section on one side isn't there. Just there's just, again, it's light, and it was built out in the middle of nowhere whenever they built it in Commerce City, which is about, I'm gonna guess, and people who live in Colorado probably will tell me, but I'm guessing it's about 15 or 20 minutes from downtown, which isn't a horrible amount.
Not bad at all. Not like FC Dallas or
which is 45 minutes in Frisco,
or Chicago.
Yeah, and Bridgeview, which is very hard to get to, even though it's probably only 25 minutes from downtown too. Chicago people complain.
But that's a hard drive.
It is a hard drive for that. So, but it's just outside. Now they're starting to build houses actually in fairly close proximity to it. And so there's stuff that's starting to move, and it used to be sort of in an industrial park, and there's still an industrial park, but there's houses across the street not too far. So it's still a pretty sprawling complex. Actually, again, much like it is at Dignity Hill Sports Park. Not as many fields. Yeah, well, I've been there a bunch. Again, the only team I've watched probably more than the LA Galaxy is the Colorado Rapids.
And are you proud of that?
No, because they're horrible games. I'm trying to take my son. I take my son who lives in Colorado to Rapids games because those are the ones that he can go see, and I want him.
Now, is he a Rapids fan or Galaxy fan?
He would tell you that he's a Galaxy fan,
okay.
which
Just want to make sure.
Which I think I've had my influence on. However, I told him that when he's there, you should be cheering for the Rapids because unless they're playing the Galaxy, that's your team that you should do. So yeah, I mean, I don't know that he loves it, but he had fun the last time we went. So he's starting to get a little more into it. But anyway, so that's what it is. They'll return back from Colorado on Thursday, September 12th. Train on Friday and Saturday, and then a game on Sunday. Sporting Kansas City coming up on Sunday, September 15th, at 7 p.m. kickoff time. There at the end of the week. Those are always fun. Sunday at 7.
It's another busy week for these guys. And sometimes I feel sorry for them, but hey, they're professionals. Suck it up. Get your butt out there. Practice, play.
Yeah, that's what they're going to have to do here for the foreseeable future. Like we said, 6 games, 26 days, 1 game every 4.33 days. So there's a ton of games here from here on out until the very end of the season. They're 10 days they had off between games this last time. That's the last break they have until even after the playoffs. It's going to be, I think there's an international break right after the playoffs are over, or right after the regular season is over. There's an international break, and then it's right into the playoffs. So it's going to be a sprint here to the finish, and then possibly even into the playoffs for the LA Galaxy.
And speaking of those playoffs, it's going to be very interesting with the one-off system that's being introduced this season.
Yeah.
Personally, I like the home and home.
It's fun.
You give your team a chance, but this almost like a sudden death thing. It's kind of brings a real dynamic element to it.
Yeah, I think it brings that element to it. I also think, it's more of a reward in the regular season for having the better schedule. I'll say that
no reseeding either.
Yeah, and no reseeding. So you're not reseeding those. So there's basically a straight playoff format or a straight table format that just carries through from the very beginning all the way to the end, which I think they're going to regret. I think the reseeding would have been the proper thing to do to give everybody the biggest
I can see that
sort of thing. But anyway, looking at all that. So the playoffs are an unknown this year, and certainly an unknown in terms of how that's going to happen, how that's going to work, whether or not the home teams are going to have the advantage. I mean, we've seen that in one-off playoffs before that the home team doesn't necessarily have the advantage, but there's reasons that they probably will in this particular case. So finishing as high as you can is usually the best thing that you can do in these, and I know that sounds sort of simple, but the Galaxy finishing 2 or 3 is pretty good. The Galaxy actually finishing 6 or 7 is a good finish for them as well, to be on the other side of the bracket as LAFC. So that way there is a Western Conference final meeting, which is, I think, if we're being honest, the dream matchup there is for LAFC, LA Galaxy.
Incredible. That would be off the charts. That would be Real Madrid, Barcelona. That would be
they're going to need
the
to find
two Manchester teams, the North London derby. Arsenal against that T team, Sophie, that T team.
That's right, the Tottenham team.
Right.
No, I mean, in my mind, eventually that game, a playoff game of that caliber, gets moved to a bigger stadium because there's too many people who want to see it. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe people wouldn't like that, but in my mind, I'm thinking, would you go to the new Inglewood Stadium and have 65,000 people there?
Sure, why not? As long as you don't have to pay for parking.
I'm sure you do. It's still Los Angeles. So anyway, that's sort of where you look at the playoffs and how that goes. Now, going back, and here's the big deal is I think the theme for this is, as was stated by the players themselves in sort of a confused fashion from what I'm reading from the quotes, but the theme is we have 6 games remaining and we're focused on all 6 of them, but not really Colorado first.
It's like a 6-game final.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And I agree having that mentality.
I think you almost have to, especially where they sit right now, 8th place, 1 spot out of the final playoff spot. This is the way you have to look at it. I mean, of course, they also say 1 game at a time. I think Schelotto said we can't just focus on 1 game. It's 6 games. But these are really, they're must-wins. And the first must-win is...
Well, see, okay, don't use it.
Or
must results.
Or should win.
Or should win. That's where it comes, it should win, because you're not in the must-win segment. I mean...
Not yet.
I can certainly see a scenario where the LA Galaxy lose to Colorado and still make the playoffs, and it's not a great scenario. I don't think that's where you want to go. If you're the Galaxy, you want to win all of these. But the thing about Colorado game is that we know the Galaxy are going to be shorthanded, certainly with international call-ups. And if you watched any of the games over the weekend, why MLS did you make us watch that crappy soccer over the weekend? Whenever they're like all these internationals are gone, Seattle ended up losing to the Colorado Rapids, and that was a game where Seattle I think was missing 10 or 11 players to international call-ups and everything else. So
I just keep asking myself why MLS keeps playing during the international breaks when all the other top leagues in the world have the break off.
Yeah.
Why does MLS keep doing it?
Well, they tried to fix it this year, and yet they still sort of did. And again, it's not all on... it's all on MLS, but, some of these teams chose to play during these times as well. Now, that meant a congested schedule other times if they don't play these games. And with the congested schedule already this year, because they moved everything forward, you're sort of seeing the result of this, which is teams got screwed. They absolutely did. And there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, Seattle is not as bad as they looked against Colorado. I also don't think they're that good. But at the same time, Seattle, looked totally outmatched by Colorado, and that's not how that should happen. It could happen even with full strength, but it's unlikely that happens if Seattle has all of their players. So the Galaxy right now GBS came out with an update telling us basically Giancarlo Gonzalez, Larry, you were there.
He was at training today.
People was at training, so we got him. So he's already back, and he's expected to play. So that's not a problem.
And Zlatan also is expected to play. He's had a sore Achilles, but Schelotto said he's fine and he's ready to go.
Right. So,
even though he lost his voice.
Even though, yes, even though he's decided not to talk. The players that are still up in the air on the international duty side of thing are Jonathan Dos Santos, Oriel Antuna, Sebastian Lletget, and Rolf Felcher. Now, Guillermo came out today and told us and told Larry and the rest of the reporters that were there. I don't want to say us as if I was there. I don't want to take credit for Larry's hard work, but that Rolf Felcher and Oriel Antuna will be flying from their respective international duties directly to Colorado to meet the team on Wednesday morning. From everything that GBS has sort of intimated through his quotes and what he's saying, it sounds like he's planning on playing without Jonathan Dos Santos and Sebastian Lletget right now.
But will Antuna and Felcher fly coach or first class?
They're gonna. I think they fly first class.
I think so too. I would certainly hope
it's
so.
It's not a charter issue, so you can buy them first class tickets, so you get them nice and comfortable. And depending on how many minutes they play with both Mexico and Venezuela, and Rolf Felcher, by the way, sometimes doesn't play for Venezuela at all. So you could definitely see Rolf coming in and playing. Let's see, Venezuela plays in Tampa, Florida, so not a ridiculously long way, but still away. It's not super close. Mexico will be in San Antonio, which is close to Denver, so that's not a big flight there.
That's a hop, skip, and a jump.
It is. It's a pretty quick one. Probably like an hour and 15 minutes, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So that one happens. If Sebastian Lletget was going to fly from St. Louis, that's not a huge jump either. So
that's a car ride.
Yeah, it can be. It's not a fun car ride, but it's a car ride.
It's a car ride, yeah.
So if you look at those, I still hold out in my mind at least some hope that Sebastian Lletget and Jonathan Dos Santos will still be available because of their locations, but all depends on minutes played.
Yeah, I wonder if Schelotto has talked with the various head coaches and instructed them, don't go beyond this number of minutes for these games, especially with the importance of these games coming up on the Galaxy schedule. I wonder if he has some kind of a prearranged agreement. Who knows?
I would hope so, but I've been hoping that, and I just don't. It seems, I saw a video of Sebastian Lletget training today with the U.S. men's national team, and, it's sort of one of those things you look at that.
And let's just hope he stays healthy. My goodness.
And some of the USA players are going back to their European clubs, so they are getting released a little bit early, which means that if they were going to release Sebastian Lletget early, we would have heard about it, and so he's not getting released, which means he probably has a higher likelihood of playing now.
He's probably going to start, yeah.
Yeah, and so that you put all that in, and so, if Lletget starts, if Jonathan Dos Santos starts, I think you probably rule him out for this game against Colorado, but just wanted to bring that update from training that GBS was talking about Felcher and talking about Oriel Antuna and whether he knows maybe that they're not, either one's not playing and one is going to play limited minutes. If that happens, then those guys very well could be available for this Colorado match. So a starting lineup going to be difficult to predict, for this Colorado game just because of some of that. I think you have, you're hoping that you have guys like Perry Kitchen, who has not been making the starting lineups and probably has some sort of injury still. You're hoping maybe he's healthy enough to play, because certainly you could use him in there. You could use Corona in those in positions where he hasn't been starting and he's been coming off the bench for Sebastian Lletget. So Corona sort of fits into the Sebastian Lletget. Servando Carrasco can fill in there. I know people aren't exactly excited. You had Efrain Alvarez, who could also possibly fill into one of those midfields, although he would usually play for Fabio Alvarez. So there's ways to sort of get around this and work. And
how about the back line?
See, I think the back line's an easier sort of issue right now.
Shelvik, Polenta, Pipo.
And then either Felcher or Araujo. And
yeah.
I don't think you lose a ton either way. And Araujo probably wants to redeem himself, so I wouldn't be surprised if Araujo starts anyway.
Let's not talk about that play against Seattle.
So, there's all those things. So I think the back line's an easy one. I think the midfield's a little bit harder to sort of predict and figure out what's going to happen. All right, so then we go to another update, because Romain Alessandrini, you saw him.
I did not see him, but I heard he trained early, and he had left training early, not injured, just left training early, went inside and worked out. But I understand he did train off to the side again, and Schelotto has plans to work him out individually on Friday and see where he stands, and he conceivably could get some playing time against either Montreal or Real Salt Lake in a couple weeks.
Yeah, which is, I think it might be a little soon in my mind. I'm still pumping the brakes on this.
I certainly couldn't see him play more than like 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to have to be just, and he has to be 100. Here's what Guillermo Barros Schelotto said at training today about Romain Alessandrini. He says he's doing well. He was on the pitch last week, and I think he will be working this week. Maybe Friday he'll have some minutes with me, maybe 10 days more to be ready for some minutes for Montreal or Salt Lake. I am thinking about him in these two games. Asked him whether it was important to be patient with him, and Schelotto says, we need to keep calm with him because we need him back to be ready for us maybe the last 4 games, but when he does come back, he has to be 100%. He's very motivated to play the last 3 or 4 games. He knows the team needs him. So certainly I think that's a reasonable thing.
That's the right approach in my opinion.
You can't rush this.
Definitely cannot, especially with his injury history. You cannot rush him back.
And he really,
and Schelotto always is told us he's a very, quote, very important player, unquote. So he's gonna really play it cautious with him, and understandably so.
Yeah, he'd have to be. I mean, this is a guy who hasn't played since April 19th?
16th, 19th,
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he had that meniscus root repair, whatever that is, in his left knee, and it was quite a serious injury. And they originally said he wouldn't be back until September. Well, this is September, and he's just now on his way back. And I think realistically, another 2 weeks. And maybe full time, maybe for the Houston season ender.
Yeah, I mean that, and then I think the Galaxy are hopeful they'll be in a playoff position and he can have an impact in the playoffs. I mean,
and Romain, please stay healthy, please.
It's a guy who you really do root for. He's
so likable.
He is.
He's so talented and so likable.
And he wants to do. He's a guy
who
loves
the team. He loves the team.
So whenever you see that, so Romain Alessandrini again on the mend, and GBS, it seems like I think is a little overly optimistic on when he would be back, but it's not outside the realm. I said that I thought he would play maybe 3 games before the end of the season. And this. It seems like, I'm pretty close to that, and what could happen, it might only be 2 games, and like you said, maybe a start comes in Houston if everything is still good, but we're at the point with Romain where any hiccup, any sort of swelling that he has, any sort of discomfort that he has, you have to shut it back down and sort of be like, okay, we have to stop. We're working too hard.
Okay, now, if he starts, who goes to the bench? In your opinion?
I think Antuna goes to the bench.
I think so too.
Which is a good deal for the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that hurts the Galaxy at all. I think that makes the Galaxy.
That's a problem at all with bringing Antuna off the bench. He's a real spark.
He is, and he has the speed, and bringing him off the bench could really sort of change things up. So again, if you start Romain, or Romain is the sub that comes in for Antuna in the 70th minute or something like that. I mean, that's not horrible either. Neither of those guys play any defense.
It's a nice luxury to have.
It would be, and it's something the Galaxy haven't really had in terms of luxury. So anyway, so that's where we sort of sit with the LA Galaxy with the international breaks. That's where we sit with the injuries and sort of where the Galaxy might look here in Colorado. It's been interesting. It's been an interesting week because obviously the LA Galaxy currently in 8th place, and it was certainly something I raised a red flag about in terms of I thought that looking at the schedule and looking at what the Galaxy did and the loss to Seattle, at Seattle, a 4-3 loss, and just sort of looking down the way, I said, you look at these games and knowing the Galaxy don't play this weekend, and knowing that Portland does, and they were playing SKC, all these things sort of fed into it, and I said, the Galaxy could be in 8th place. I go, in fact, it's likely the Galaxy are in 8th place. And I said it on the Monday show, and then I said it again on the Thursday show, and I wasn't kidding. How
are you on predicting stocks?
Yeah, no good. No good.
Okay.
Please, I get tweets all the time.
You got lucky this one time.
I get tweets all the time of people who telling me they can predict games, and I'm like, sure you can. Yeah.
Sure you can.
I'm horrible at it, and I try to do it. I'm probably one of the most consistent people trying to predict games. I've done 700 shows, and half of those have probably been prediction shows where I've gotten it wrong. Hey, but if I was 500, I think that would be amazing. I don't think I'm anywhere near 500. I think I'm batting like 300 on these.
That's all right.
But yeah, you look at these games and trying to say it, but it looked likely that the Galaxy would finish in 8th place, and that's where they are. Now, having said that, and looking at the standings, it doesn't feel like the Galaxy are that far away from anything, and in fact, they're not that far away from anything whenever you look at it.
I mean, Josh, from the 2nd through 8th place teams are separated by what, 4 points?
4 points right now. Seattle at 46 points, the Galaxy at 42.
I mean, you talk about a fluid situation. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, and with Seattle losing right now and actually having played one more game than the LA Galaxy, so the midweek game really does sort of happen. I think Guillermo was talking and said, hey, if we win on Wednesday night, we could be in 3rd place.
I asked Shelvick about the wild standings or the wild west, and he goes, this is what MLS is all about parity. This is just the way it is.
Yeah.
And it really makes it fun. It really does.
He says, and the quote was, that's what the league is all about. Every team can beat every team. That makes it tight. And you're seeing that in the Western Conference especially. I mean, you even look at Sporting Kansas City, who is only 5 points behind the LA Galaxy right now in 9th place, and Sporting Kansas City has had a, quote-unquote, pretty horrible season so far. Tons of injuries. I mean, they couldn't even dress full teams. They were dressing like 14, 15 players for games, and that was all they had because there was just nothing there. So they've been on a turn, and the Galaxy's opponent coming up this Sunday, as we get ready, is a much better team now than they were in the middle of the year. And so all these things can sort of tie into it. But you look at it, and one of these teams is going to have to drop out. And I think Eric always votes for FC Dallas, saying that they're going to drop out. I think that's a possibility at 43 points. Portland, to me, with all their games at home, Larry, and you reminded me about that.
Very dangerous.
I think that they're easily a playoff team. I keep saying that Seattle shouldn't be a playoff team, but yet there they are sitting in 2nd place. I'll probably end up being wrong about that, but I don't think I'm going to be that wrong about them. I think that they're going to come back and do that. But the rest of the teams, somebody's going to have to give if the Galaxy are going to get in. FC Dallas seems likely to be that team. Maybe Minnesota United, who has
That's the dark horse team, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Outside of the Galaxy, of course, Minnesota is the dark horse team, but they can play defense like they played against that other LA team about a week or so ago. Watch out for them.
Yeah, I think that they can be. I think they can be a danger. Obviously, they're in 3rd place now. They're all of 3 points better than right now the LA Galaxy. So I mean, there's nothing separating any of these teams. So I think that there shouldn't be panic. And on one of the last shows that we talked about was the Galaxy shouldn't be panicking. They shouldn't be panicking.
I think panic is the wrong word. I think urgent is a better word, but not panic. I mean, I'd hate to use that term for any team, but just there is a building sense of urgency. It's not a dramatic level yet, but there is a sense of urgency. I don't like to use the word panic, although I think I might have written that in my notebook today.
You're like, oh, I used panic 7 times. Oh, nice.
No, I think it was once.
No, probably just once. But no, there shouldn't be panic, but there is, as you said, urgency is a great word for it because that's what it is. Joe Corona says it's going to be 6 more finals we have to play, talking about the 6 games that they have. He goes, play them the best we can because we know a playoff spot is at stake. We have to take it one game at a time and give it our best shot. The team is very confident. We know everyone is on the same page, and we have all the confidence in each other, and we're going to be okay. So, I mean, there is that confidence. I think they need to have it. It's that confusion, though, right? Because you're thinking about all 6 games, but you can't play all 6 games at once. You have to play one game at a time, and in order to think about all 6, you have to start with 1.
I'll be interested to see what they say if Wednesday's game does not go in their favor. I'll be interested to see what the tone of conversation is like Friday at training. Could be quite a dramatic switch.
Yeah, I mean, I think then there is a little bit. Again, I think a point is good enough to get them sort of where they need to go.
Too.
So
a point is a good result.
You're like, okay, tough place to play at altitude. You get a point, great. Move on. And then you have home games, and I've said it. They have 3 home games remaining. They have to win all 3. I mean, you have to get 9 points from those if you really want to do it. So that's where the main focus is. And if you can get some results in some of those and win a couple of those, I mean, I think they should be able to beat Houston in Houston the last game. That seems like one. But beating RSL at RSL is a tough game. Beating Colorado at Colorado is a tough game. Both of those at altitude. Both of those are short rest games. All this stuff is sort of coming. You either have short rests before or short rests after for these games. So all those things are difficult to sort of predict and see where they're going to go. But with the Galaxy right now, sitting about just 1 point out of the 7th place position. So any point really helps because you're going to be taking points away from other Western Conference teams. Everything except for the game against Montreal, I think, is a Western Conference game. So there's a bunch of quote-unquote 6-pointers in there every single time whenever you look. So the interesting thing that I've been seeing, though, Larry, and it's funny because I think we started some of this, and certainly Sophie mentioned it, and I have too, is that we've seen this 2019 team compared to the 2012 team. And it's an easy comparison when you look at it just on the surface, which is, the 2012 team did not start out great, but they got hot at the end of the year, and then they ran through the playoffs. And that is the attitude that we have on this, which is that's okay. And I think if you're looking at that 2012 team and you say that this 2019 team, you have to be like, okay, you're expecting that surge at the end. Well, then I went and looked up the record of the 2012 team just because I was like, we keep comparing this, but what would the Galaxy really have to do over the last 6 games, to be more like that 2012 team? But then I looked at the 2012 team and I'm like, their run didn't start 6 games before the end of the season. Their run started 16 games before the end of the season. As a matter of fact, the LA Galaxy in 2012, in their last 16 games, so just over halfway through the rest of the season, their last 16 games, their record was 10 wins, 2 losses, and 4 draws. They lost twice in 16 games down the stretch.
That's Bruce Arena.
That is Bruce Arena. And you have to look at their first 18 games where they lost 10 times.
Wow.
So, yeah, there was a bad start by the 2012 team, and that's certainly something. But we theorize it like, and we want to put it and wrap it up in a bow as if it was just this late-season run. It was not a late-season run. It was a solid second half of soccer that saw them finish in 4th place in the Western Conference with 52 points, I believe.
Yeah, I just wonder about that 2012 team, but obviously they didn't make the number of changes that this season's Galaxy team made in personnel. This team has been so wildly inconsistent, so frustratingly inconsistent.
Yeah.
Against LAFC, first 15, 16 minutes, they look like world beaters. And then it's like they turned the lamp off and flipped the switch and went to bed and just played most of the second half defending. It's just, I don't know, the inconsistency just drives us nuts. It really does.
It has.
And they have too much talent They have too much talent to play like this, and it's too deep in the season to be playing like this.
That's sort of the thing. Again, that 2012 team finished 4th in the Western Conference, 54 points. So the Galaxy would basically
would love to have 54 points.
That would mean they got 12 points. Yeah, I think I did
12
math.
points.
Yeah, 12 points out of these last
6
6 games. Now, let's go back and look at 2018 because certainly people talk about 2018, and even the players said, hey, we got hot at the end of last year, came up just a little bit short. So
but don't bring up the season finale.
I know. Well, and that was the whole thing. So the last 6 games in that 2018 season, the LA Galaxy finished 3-2-1, which is not a horrible record whenever you figure that. Okay.
But the Galaxy would take that this time though, or this season.
I don't know if it's enough.
I think. Yeah, true.
It's close.
Yeah. I could see that. Sure.
Because they finished with 10 points in those last 6 games, but really they should have had 13 points. And those 13 points, if you give the LA Galaxy 13 points now in 2019, guaranteed they're in the playoffs. They're probably in the middle, a 3 or a 4, maybe even a 2. It all depends on how the rest of the Western Conference shakes out.
Sure.
But that's what you're looking at. I mean, you're looking for this team to be better than they were in 2018. And in my mind, the Galaxy played their best soccer the last 6 games of that season. Well, last 5.5 games of that season.
5.5, yes.
Because certainly the second half against Houston on the closing
day
day of the season.
I can still see that game. Oh my goodness.
2-0 at halftime, Larry.
Painful.
2-0 at
halftime.
3-2 loss. Was it 3-2 or was it 4-2? It was 3-2. Yeah, it was 3-2. It was 3-2 loss. So that was it.
You talk about dropping a bomb on a team and just, oh my goodness gracious.
Under Dom Kinnear.
Yep.
And I remember that whenever I asked after that game, I asked Dom Kinnear, I go, is it? Can you put any of this in perspective that you guys really did have a good run down the end? He's like, I can't right now. He goes, you're asking me to try to think big picture here, and we just lost the playoffs, and it was like
all they had to do was win, and they were in.
That was it. That was it. And that was whenever there were 6 teams from each conference. Now there's 7 teams from each conference. I mean, the Galaxy record looks like, and certainly the record that they have and the teams that are playing down the stretch seem like they should be able to do something. In fact, Larry, just going by this, like if you look at the schedule and where you're looking at, I don't see a team that is technically better than the Galaxy. Okay, now, that doesn't mean they're not going to lose games. I don't want to get, Josh just predicted they're going to win all 6 last games, which, by the way, they could. They could get 18 points. And if they do that, they're finishing second in the Western Conference. I'm telling you right now. And that's a great run up to the playoffs. All that would be great. That's best case scenario. I love Eric, by the way, the Hammer sent me a text, and he was like, he was going over best case scenarios for the Galaxy, like in these last 6 games. He's like, this is the best case scenario. And he comes back and he has like a loss in there. I'm like, no. Best case scenario would then be winning all 6 games. Yeah.
Unbeaten, Eric.
I go, come on. That's not hard. I go, in worst cases, they lose all of them. I go, absolutely. With this team, could you count that out, that they lose every single one of these games? No. I can't.
No. Not the way this team has been so inconsistent. No, I cannot. It's not going to happen. I'll go right out and say it. It's not going to happen, but no.
Yeah. No, don't even say. There's people who just threw stuff at their phone or their radio, however they're listening to us, and they're like, don't even say it. Okay, so the Galaxy go away to Colorado, home to Sporting Kansas City, home to Montreal, away to Real Salt Lake, home to Vancouver, and away to Houston. But Larry, I know you did some digging on some of the stats against these teams.
Night, although I didn't get any extra credit for it, but I did some research.
You got your parking money. What more do you want?
That's true. Now, as far as playing at Colorado, since 2014, the Galaxy are 3-3-0 at Colorado. At Real Salt Lake, since 2014, the Galaxy are 1-2-3, and at Houston, since 2014, the Galaxy are 3-2-1. Now, at home against Vancouver, the Galaxy is 3-2-1 since 2014. Against Montreal, they're 1-0-1. Of course, Montreal has barely played out here since 2014.
Right.
But the scary one is Sporting Kansas City. Since 2014, the Galaxy is 1-2-1 at home against them. And the caveat, they haven't beaten Kansas City at home since April of 2015.
Woo.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it's one of those.
And those were the good Kansas City teams. This year's team is not nearly as good as that one was.
Yeah, I think, by the way, they've been coming on. So it's one of those, it's like, they're getting hot at the right time, and they're still technically, in the playoff hunt. The only teams that are eliminated right now, by the way, from the playoffs, Vancouver Whitecaps, who the Galaxy play, and FC Cincinnati. So those are the only 2 that have been eliminated. There's 3 teams who have clinched postseason, LAFC, New York City FC, and Philadelphia Union. So 2 Eastern Conference, 1 Western Conference. And I'm guessing nobody in the Western Conference clinches another playoff spot for at least another 2 or 3 games here.
And I'd say until the last game of the season.
Well,
I think it's going to go right down to the wire.
It could. I think people are going to qualify for the postseason. Where their spot is, I think will move, but it's not going to be by much. You're right. It could come down to the last couple games in terms of where they go. So, I mean, that's where you're sitting with this LA Galaxy team, is that they have some games that on paper look winnable, but when you go back and you sort of look at the histories, there's certainly some struggles. Playing at Colorado is not easy. We already talked about it.
That's the game that really scares me.
It's the game that matters the least. I'll tell you, it really is, in terms of they could lose that game and I still see them making the playoffs. It's a more difficult road. We've already said that.
It's a sense of urgency builds, yeah.
But you can't go win this game and then lose to Sporting Kansas City. All of a sudden, you really need those 9 points at home. Those really need to be 9 points. Now, again, could I see some combination of, if the Galaxy don't lose any game, and could they get, I doubt they're going to get 6 draws, but let's say they don't win any game, or they don't lose any game, and there's a mixture of draws, they make the playoffs. I mean,
how about if they get 6 ties? You think they'll make the playoffs?
6 points doesn't seem like it's enough, does it?
That won't be enough.
And it's like, that gets canceled out by 2 wins by anybody else, right? And so it's not enough points. But you have to think that they can beat Montreal at home. I mean, that's one of those where you're like, okay, that's a 3-pointer. The ones that are more question marks, I mean, Sporting Kansas City should be a win. But as you said, the record against Sporting Kansas City, the team now that is SKC now and not in the middle of the season, is a different team. So, how does that sort of match up, and how does that play?
And the Rapids are a different team too.
The Rapids are a different team. We're going to talk about that shortly with a new head coach. So certainly that's different. Vancouver should be a win. There's no reason that one's not a win, and you should go to Houston and be able to win. But winning on the road is hard, and so you can't just say any of these games on the road. 3 games remaining at home, 3 games remaining on the road. The ones on the road you should have a lower chance of winning because they're on the road. So those are probably the most dangerous of those games. And really the 3 home games the Galaxy have should all be wins. So there's 9 points there that the Galaxy should have in your mind if you can trust them to be consistent over these next 6 games.
And can you just imagine if it comes down to the last game of the season at Houston, and it's about 120 degrees.
And they're kicking off at 1 p.m.
At 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah. Well, it's like it ends up being 3 p.m. but that's still not any better, in Texas. That's not a good thing. So anyway, that's, again, where the Galaxy sit. That's their schedule coming up. Again, a bunch of games. You have the schedule sort of against them and sort of what the stats are against these teams. So there's a lot of variability in these last 6 games. You can see it, and going against the Western Conference and trying to predict where anybody's going to finish right now seems like it's a fool's errand.
It is.
And so
fool's gold.
I would say I don't think there's any reason to panic with the Galaxy in 8th right now. You knew that. They're 4 points out of second place.
It's just urgent. That's what you want to see. We're not talking about the song. We're talking about the Galaxy. Urgent.
Let's see. Joe Corona says, we know we have very important players with national teams missing, but that's going to be a great opportunity for guys that haven't been playing as much. I think the team is prepared for coming, so I wanted to sort of cover that with him. Jorgen Shelvik, I thought this was interesting. He says, I think we're in better shape now than before the break. Of course it was a tough loss in Seattle. We had a good week of practice. We're refreshed and mentally ready. So he seems to sort of there. He's also on the every game now is the final. We just need to get enough points to get into the playoffs. I don't know how many games we need to win, but every game is a final for us now. That's an important thing. The Galaxy should not be scoreboard watching right now, and should not be, because everything is within their reach, within their grasp.
Just worry about yourself.
Just worry about the game you have coming up, the Colorado game, and getting 3 points from that one. And if you do that, you don't have to watch the standings. It won't matter because you'll just climb right up the standings and you'll be in it.
But if you don't, I wouldn't be surprised if they take a peek at the standings.
I mean, I have to imagine before you go to sleep every night, you look at the standings and you're like, okay.
Like a sideways glance, just...
I'm sure GBS wakes up with cold sweats thinking about, missing the playoffs by a point, having to play Houston and getting knocked out by Houston again for the second year in a row.
Imagine what Chris Klein and Dennis DeCloser are thinking.
There's some squeaky bumps. There's some squeaky bumps coming down here at the end. Let's see. I'm trying to think. He says, this is Jorgen. He says, we finished strong last year, and hopefully we can do the same this year. Just finish the season better to get into the playoffs. For us, that's our goal. Win every game and get enough points. I like the win every game. That makes it simple, right? Finish with 18 points. I guarantee you're in the playoffs with 18 more points. And that would be a ton of points.
Wouldn't that be something if they can pull that off? I mean, they have the talent to do it. When everybody is available, everybody's healthy. They have the talent to do it. Will they do it? I don't think so. They're too inconsistent, but they can do it.
Here's the thing that again, is said.
They're capable.
We say these things and we look at them and certainly, saying 6 wins, 6 games and 3 points for and getting 18 points for winning all 6 games is something the Galaxy could do. I just wonder, what is this schedule going to do, not only to the Galaxy, but to everybody? And so far, I've seen everybody has a condensed schedule down the end. This is it. I mean, everybody has really 6. Some teams had 7 games. Some teams have 5 games. But it's still a bunch of games in a very small amount of time. So what's that going to do to this race? I mean, it just, in my mind, it makes the inconsistent more inconsistent.
If that makes sense, sure.
Yeah, and it muddies up any sort of picture that you have of people pulling away. There is no pulling away right now.
There's no pulling away, not the way that the standings are. There's no pulling away this year. Just too tight, too condensed.
Yeah, it seems like that. GBS says the result, and he's talking about in Colorado, the result will be very important for the future for everyone. We have one last game than Dallas and Seattle. It will be very important to beat Colorado in the next game. I think we need to think about 6 games, not just one. The first one is in Colorado, but we need to play well and get a good result. That was me explaining that, by the way, which is you need to think about Colorado, but also in terms of 6 games. And he's right.
Let's take care of the first one first.
First one first, but that's part of 6, and we understand it's part of 6. And that's sort of what he's saying. So, whenever I say confusing, it sounds confusing. Oh, well, we're going to focus on this game, but we're also focused on all. You can't focus on both. You can. One is a subset of that 6. And so that's sort of, I think, where they're looking and sort of how their mindset is. Sometimes I worry with professional athletes whether or not you give them too much to think about if it hurts things.
It hurts them.
It could. It very well could. I mean, some guys play soccer, and that's all they do, and that's all they're ever going to do, and they're just soccer guys, and they're not going to win any IQ contests, and, they could be very smart about soccer. They're just not smart about anything else, and, You give them too much, and sometimes you can bog them down. Some guys
can handle it.
Some guys can handle that and much more.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting how the coach sort of chooses to phrase it, whether or not he thinks his guys are capable of handling it or whether he has to narrow it down.
Now, which players on the Galaxy do you think,
nice try.
Do you think can handle it and much more?
I mean, somebody like Zlatan is a very smart sort of guy. He's a guy who tends to be singular focus anyway, so you're not going to hurt him by telling him to think about 6 games. He won't care.
I mean, I had to know about Zlatan, and his focus was how he got ready for that LAFC return match at Bank of California Stadium. I mean, it was one-word answers. He didn't want to talk during the weekly media scrum a couple weeks ago. I mean, he had his game face on early.
Yeah.
And then after the game, he says he wants to play that team again at Bank of California Stadium. And when you're talking about somebody who's focused, that's the guy you're talking about.
That's his goal. I'll tell you that.
That's his goal.
He's thinking MLS Cup because he wants to but he knows he has to go through LAFC to do it, and so he knows that the goal is to meet them in the playoffs and knock them out.
Right.
And if the Galaxy do that...
Especially at that stadium.
Especially at that. He wants it.
And
I think that's a sign of competitor. You talk about guys who can handle it. You know, Jonathan Dos Santos, a smart guy. I think there's guys who you keep it away from, like Uriel Antuna, which is sort of one game at a time. Think about what you're doing during these first 15 minutes. Don't think about anything else. This is it. I think that, Christian Pavone, because he's a younger kid. Also, same thing. This game only. Only think about this game, what you have to do in this game, and make that happen. I mean, some of the smarter guys like David Bingham, you can
David Bingham certainly. Sebastian Lugette.
Pipo Gonzalez is one of those guys. I mean, Diego Polenta, in my mind, is more of a guy who's a focus on this game. And
and speaking of Polenta, as the season has gone on, he's impressed me more and more and more. I mean, I've always said that I think Steres has been our most consistent defender, and Gonzalez has been our best one. Polenta is right there.
Yeah.
He really is right there.
He's become really consistent. I think with the Gonzalez having the horror game against Seattle, everybody sort of wants to reframe how he has been. But in my mind, again, I think he's been consistent, and I think that he's been, an asset to the LA Galaxy back line. I think Dan Steres has been the most consistent defender on that.
And he even says good morning to us as he walks by.
See? So, I mean, that's always a good thing as well.
I don't think he spoke English, but yeah, he's being friendly.
He is. Everybody is. That whole back line seems. I feel like if you want a key to the Galaxy's success in terms of winning the next 6 games, it's to have the defense gel and come together, and that all works. I mean, that's an easy fix in terms of everybody goes, no duh, Josh. That's the thing. The likelihood of all those things, I think the offense is going to score goals. They seem like they're going to with Pavone and Fabio Alvarez and Antuna, possibly with Alessandrini come back, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. They're going to score goals. That's fine. If this defense can come together and limit their mistakes to 1 or 2 a game, I really think that then all of a sudden this Galaxy team becomes the team that we've seen at moments where they're unbeatable. Who's going to beat them?
I think that's the team that the league fears. I think you pointed it out. Sophie has pointed that out. This team, when it's at the top of its game, is one of, if not the best team in the league. And it's a team that nobody wants to face in the postseason.
Which is crazy because they're not going to get any of the sort of respect of being that unless they start winning games like this, because everybody's perfectly happy putting them in a box of inconsistent, which they'd be correct, inconsistent, and a team that, despite its talent, just hasn't been able to come together. I get it. I get why they say that, and I get why they do that, and all those things make sense to me. I'm just, in my mind, the Galaxy are drastically underestimated and also probably overestimated at the same time, which probably puts them right where they're supposed to be. But it's one of those things that we continue to keep an eye on, and if they fix things, then if you fix the defensive issues they've had that they didn't have at the beginning of the year, by the way. If you fix those issues, I think the Galaxy suddenly become world beaters, and then who's gonna take them down?
In your opinion, what is the best Galaxy back line?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
In my mind, and I actually...
How about Polenta at left back?
Well, so that's really where it comes down to, because right now I would argue that Felcher over Araujo, but it's not by a bunch, but it's by some, and it's going to be that way for the rest of this year. So Felcher is the right back. I think Steres and Gonzalez in the center are your 2 best center back pairings, and I think that they play well together, and that's something that probably should have happened in Seattle and didn't.
Polenta on the left.
And Polenta on the left.
I agree.
And I don't think Polenta is as good a left back in terms of the attacking phase as Shelvik is.
But you think of the job he did on Carlos Vela.
Wow. That's why
you put him on the left side.
That's why you do that. And I think that the Galaxy, can have success. That again, if I could do anything, if I could go in and Guillermo gave me like 20 minutes to talk to the team, I would just basically go in there and I just bring the defense around. I'll be like, okay, listen, you're going to get your chances to go forward. I promise. But I need you to be patient. As in, if it's 0-0 in the 70th minute, I'm a happy camper. All right? I want a 0 on that back. Our offense will score goals. We know they'll score goals, whether it's on a counterattack or anything else. I don't need you always to be into the attack, because when the Galaxy turn the ball over in the center of midfield and the outside backs are pressed forward, that's where the problems hit.
Okay, with everybody healthy and available, and you have a lineup card, Guillermo wants you to mark it up. Who's your ideal starting 11?
So Zlatan. Okay, so we'll start from the back.
Yeah.
So Bingham. Then we go left back, which is Polenta, Gonzalez, Steres, and Felcher. I go with right now. I would go with Corona, or not Corona. Excuse me. I would go with Jonathan Dos Santos and Sebastian Lletget in the center of midfield. I would go Fabio Alvarez on top of them, so that would be over top. On the right side, everybody's healthy. I put Romain Alessandrini. On the left side, it would be Christian Pavon, and then Zlatan Ibrahimovic up top. I think
that'd be my
nobody's going to disagree.
Well.
That's not a disagreeable. That's not something and if you do disagree, I don't know. Maybe you want Joe Corona over Sebastian Lletget. Maybe you want to move. There's somebody who will disagree, and I'll be like, okay, sure, whatever, it's fine. You can believe that. I just think that's the starting 11. That's like one of those things. If you're predicting a lineup when everybody's healthy, it's the easiest thing in the world, because you know who the best players are, and you're like, this is who I would probably put out there. Could somebody say that they would put Shelvik out as left back as a starter over Polenta in that particular formation? I can't say that anybody would.
No.
And I like Jorgen Shelvik a lot more than most people probably do. But that being said,
actually, he hasn't played too badly lately. He really hasn't. I mean, he's been okay.
It's tough. It's always tough to say. He has. For him, he's played better, and I think that's the
best way to put it.
Right. For him, he's played better. I would, if you have to play him, I trust him right now. I mean, you play him. I'm not going to play anybody else at that position right now.
Now, this ideal lineup we just talked about, you think we'll see that in a Galaxy game before the end of the season?
Maybe Houston. I mean, maybe that's it.
Houston?
Maybe. I don't think it's going to happen before that. You may see it on the field in terms of Alessandrini coming in off the bench and then making that lineup. I think it's a hell of a lineup myself. It's Alessandrini is sort of the toss-up and all that, and if it's not him, then it's Antuna. Either on the right or the left, and however you want to do it for Pavone. And by the way, Aurelio Antuna did score for Mexico in the game against the United States. That was a 3-0 win by Mexico. Jonathan Dos Santos.
I'm glad
played
I missed it.
Yeah. I have not been
I heard it was brutal. I'm glad I missed it.
I have not been able to muster a lot of U.S. men's national team watching as of late, and mostly just because I get busy with Galaxy and I do all that stuff as well. But I think Mexico is fun to watch, so that's what I like to see.
They have a very good coach now. It's about time.
And Jonathan Dos Santos in there, Aurelio Antuna, so they're sort of the more fun one to focus on if you're a Galaxy fan right now. All right, let's see. I think we're about ready to get. Do you want to get ready for this Colorado game? I mean, I was going to throw you into the fire and say, do you want to do a dramatic intro?
I'll try to do an intro. I've been thinking about it since I was driving over here, and I dined on a nice hamburger, fries, and Diet Coke, and I think I can do it.
You think you can do it?
I think I can do it. If I screw up, then just edit the thing out and just, you know.
There's zero chance of that ever happening, by the way. All right. So then the LA Galaxy facing off against the Colorado Rapids. Mr. Larry Morgan out on Twitter is here with your dramatic intro.
This year, it's been the wild, wild west in Major League Soccer, with 7 teams separated by no more than 4 points. With the Galaxy sitting in 8th place, they look to improve their playoff position on Wednesday in Commerce City, Colorado, against the much-improved Colorado Rapids. Watch it and hope.
Watch it and hope. I like that. Watch it and hope. Okay, good. Very good. All right.
I'll watch it and pray. I don't know. Either one.
No, yeah, I mean, whatever. I'm not editing it. It doesn't matter. We're not. I'm going to make sure that plays exactly that way.
Watch it and keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah, just fingers crossed the whole time. Let's see how that goes. All right. So the LA Galaxy 13-12-3, 42 points up against the Colorado Rapids 9-14 and 6, 33 points. The Galaxy on the road this year 4-8-2, 14 points. The Colorado Rapids at home this year year, 7-6-2 for 23 points. The streaks, however, are in the opposite direction. The Colorado Rapids have a 2-game winning streak, which is interesting.
2 shutouts in a row.
2-0 wins, one over the Red Bulls and one over Seattle. Again, we talked about Seattle being heavily undermanned in that particular game, but nonetheless, that was a win.
Win is a 2-0 win. I don't care if it's against a blind school. It's a 2-0 win.
It is absolutely a 2-0 win. The LA Galaxy are winless in 3 and have just 2 wins in their last 8 games.
0-2-2 in their last 4.
Oh, that's a tough
Overall.
one. Last win for the LA Galaxy was 8-14, August 14th versus FC Dallas.
That's a month.
Yeah,
That's
it's
almost
been a month. Last loss for the LA Galaxy, obviously 9-1 at Seattle, and then you had the Colorado Rapids win just this weekend, 9-7 versus Seattle. So I
Much
think
improved under a new head coach.
that's right, Robin
Who you
Fraser.
were going to tell us about?
I am. Robin Fraser, the new head coach for the Colorado Rapids, was of course an LA Galaxy player from 1996 to 2000.
The original members, yep.
Defender, 129 appearances, 1 goal, I think was what he had. But
so in other words, he wasn't exactly an offensive threat.
No, but he was a
very
good
good
defender.
Very good defender.
Yeah, he's now the head coach for the Rapids. Of course, was a former head coach for Chivas USA in 2011 and 2012.
I don't know if I want to have that on my resume.
He's been an assistant coach Larry and I were talking about this before we started, and he's been an assistant coach for a bunch of different teams up in Toronto and in a bunch of other places that I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But he's a guy who really should probably be a head coach, and is a really I think who could be a really good addition for the Colorado Rapids and what they're doing. So anyway, Robin Fraser has his team now after he's taken over with 2 wins in a row, winning at New York Red Bull, which was a good win for them on the road at New York, and then coming back at home and beating, like we said, a heavily undermanned Seattle Sounders team. Now, there is a youngster who made waves over this last weekend.
I want to hear you pronounce this guy's name again, Josh.
I was going to say I'll get there eventually. He's a forward, number 99, by the way, number 9, little Gretzky love.
I was going to say Wayne Gretzky in shorts.
Yeah, it's Andrei Shinyashiki, who is a rookie, a possible Rookie of the Year candidate, as he came out of, I believe, Denver, the University of Denver, I believe.
Denver.
Yeah, and he was drafted.
I never heard of this guy until you brought him up today.
Yeah, drafted 5th overall.
Wow.
He's originally, by the way, from Sao Paulo, Brazil. So certainly has some flair, and his left-footed close-angle shot was a thing of freaking beauty this weekend. If you go back and watch it, he got a brace in the game against Seattle, and the last one was a tap in and a good square ball across, and all that was great. But the tight angle, I think left-footed shot that he was able to send up and sort of over Stephen Fry from Seattle on the near side was just absolutely great. So they're going to have him.
Is he a big guy or a small guy?
He doesn't look that big.
No.
He is, 5'9". Yeah,
5'9".
Yeah. So somebody I'm taller than. I mean, that.
I'm taller than that too.
I was going to say you and Zlatan are usually the 2 tallest people.
I can look
Zlatan.
I'm one of the few people who can look Zlatan right in the eye.
Which is a scary proposition to be that high up, that lack of oxygen, and have to stare down the lion right there as it goes. So anyway, the Colorado Rapids, as we said, are sort of a much improved team. You've seen sort of their lineups mold, and that's sort of the whole big thing is that with Robin Fraser there now, it's sort of hard to predict exactly who he's going to start because it seems like he is pushing guys into different places and doing different things. And so, this game ends up being sort of more of a question mark than probably the Galaxy would like it to be, just because Robin Fraser's come in, new tactics, new coach, sort of some shifts in some lineups and things that are going on right there. And for the Colorado Rapids, despite the fact that they are currently in 20th overall place in the Supporters Shield, they have 33 points, Larry. I mean, if they really decided to win every single game from here on out after they've already won, I'm not saying they could be out of the playoffs. They could be in this playoff race pretty quickly.
I don't think it'll happen, though.
I don't think it'll happen either.
It's such a long shot. It is. I don't think it's going to happen.
It is.
But they can make a lot of trouble for their opponents.
Absolutely. And so you have the Colorado. I think the plus for the LA Galaxy here is the Galaxy have had 10 days off, which is good going into a high altitude game against the Colorado Rapids.
Now, having been there at that stadium, can you feel the altitude in the stands?
Anywhere you go in Colorado, you can feel the altitude. And you don't feel it, I at least don't feel it right away. It's not like when you're getting off the jet bridge and you're like, oh, God, it's killing me. No. It's about 25, 30 minutes after that where you're just walking or you're sitting and all of a sudden you go, I'm not breathing. Why am I not breathing? And you're like, oh, okay. And it's tough to sleep sometimes the first night that you're there. So that's why the Galaxy going in on Tuesday night, some people say just fly in on Wednesday. I'll tell you right now, with the thunderstorms that they have right now at this time of year, you have to fly in on Tuesday, because you might not fly in on Tuesday. You might have to fly in Wednesday morning, and you wouldn't want to get knocked out of those different things. So, yeah, it's a good. This is Zlatan's first time in Colorado.
The last time they played there, he was not available.
I think he was suspended for the All-Star game. I think that was the All-Star game suspension. So he's never played in Colorado, so he'll have that. If you expect him to be, frugal with his running, expect him to be a little more frugal with his running against Colorado, and just sort of what that thinks. I mean, Christian Pavone, the first time sort of going up to altitude with Colorado, or at Colorado. I mean, both of these games, the Colorado and the RSL game, are altitude games, and they're more difficult because of that. And everybody knows that. So
which one is higher? Have you any idea?
Denver's higher.
Denver's higher? Okay.
Yeah. I think Commerce City...
It shows you what I know about our country's geography.
I think Commerce City is like right around... it's probably under the mile high, but it's not much under the mile high, so it's like maybe 5,100. It could be... Somebody will look it up and tell me I'm wrong. Denver sits down in sort of a bowl, but the actual mile high is drawn on the Colorado Rockies upper deck. You can see it, and so that's where the mile high actually is.
Okay.
So Commerce City is probably high. It's probably over that mile high, so it's probably around 5,280 feet, somewhere right in there. So that one, and I believe Salt Lake is like at 4,000. Again, nobody quote me. This is off the top of my head, but I believe Colorado is higher. So that's so you'll see the effects of that. And as far as availability, we've talked about it. Sebastian Lletget probably not going to play. It looks like Jonathan Dos Santos, at least from up Guillermo, said not going to play. But Antuna, Felcher, and Gonzalez all seem like they are.
It'll be good to have Gonzalez back. At least
likely,
him.
Are likely to play. I feel like that's going to happen. I feel like both with Antuna and his age, even if he played 90 minutes the day before, that you could still probably get some time out of him. And with Felcher, who usually doesn't play for Venezuela, you could probably get some time out of him. But obviously, that's something you can all watch on Tuesday night to find those games and then see if those guys play. And that'll sort of be your big determining factor of whether or not they play and how they play and all that fun stuff. So certainly interesting. Again, the LA Galaxy play against the Colorado Rapids coming up on September 11th, 6 p.m. Pacific time kickoff. Spectrum Sportsnet is where you can find it at Dick's Sporting Goods Park.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to watch it. I'll be at an Elton John concert that night.
The real Elton John, or like a cover?
My third time seeing him live. He'll be playing at the Honda Center in Anaheim. I will be there.
So you'll be seeing the Rocket Man himself, huh?
Rocket Man himself. I'll have to watch the Galaxy. Hopefully there will be some highlights the next day.
Highlights.
I'm fairly confident that they will get a positive result.
I mean, that's okay. So if you had to put a percentage on them winning, in terms of what percentage would you give a win, a draw, and a loss?
Wow.
I mean, you have 100%, so you divide that up however you want.
Wow. Boy, that's.
I would. So I'll start while you think.
Sure,
okay, just because I'll make it up. I think
winning. I think maybe give them a 60% chance.
60? You think it's that high? God,
Yeah,
I
I
wouldn't
think
even
maybe
put it over
60%
50%.
No,
I just don't have that. It's just a tough place to play.
I think maybe.
I would probably go in the 40% range of them winning.
range?
Now, getting a result in my mind is like an 80%, right? So
Okay.
I go 40% on the win,
I can see that,
40% on the draw, and then
Okay.
a 20% chance of losing.
Of losing.
I just don't
Okay,
see
I
it.
can see
Doesn't
that.
feel like a loss. Now, after for the first 5 minutes and Colorado scores 7 goals or something, you could reevaluate that.
Then it might be a loss.
Yeah, it very well could be. So, anyway, that's what we have
Okay.
on the docket. And, of course, we will have a live show on Thursday. The Hammer is scheduled to be in.
And Eric will fill this seat much more than me. Is that what you're saying?
Wow. Just kick the man while he's down.
I know.
That was
I'm
good.
sorry,
I already
Eric.
did it
I was
once.
just kidding, Eric.
I already did it once, but
I'm
now
sorry.
he's going to be.
I should talk.
Yeah, he's going to be texting you nasty things now. He's going to be angry.
Or Sophie will fill this seat. I don't know.
I don't know.
No, she's way too skinny.
Yeah, that's not going to happen
Way
either.
too-
It was
way
definitely
too- way
Eric.
too
You were
thin.
right. No, it was fine.
Sorry, Eric. We love you.
All right. Again, the LA Galaxy coming up on September 11th, 6 p.m. kickoff time on Wednesday.
And don't
Spectrum
forget the
Sportsnet.
Sporting KC game on Sunday.
That's right. And we will have a full recap and a preview available for you on that Thursday night live show. So make sure you stick around for that. All right. I think that. Are you good, Larry?
I'm fine, sir. Thank you again
Okay.
for having me on here. It's always a pleasure.
Always great having you in the studio, and we'll look forward to seeing you
I
again very
tried my
soon.
best to make up for Panda's absence, and hopefully I succeeded.
I think you did.
At least part of the way.
I think you did. I think you did a
All
good
right, thanks.
job. All right.
Thanks again.
Yep, absolutely. All right. If you're looking for Mr. Larry Morgan on Twitter, he's not there, so don't look for him. It won't help you at all. Yeah. I was gonna say there's nothing there. Don't go there. He's not on Twitter. That's not how it works. If you're looking for any of his articles, though, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com where you can find all of his great writings. Look for my stuff over on cornerofthegalaxy.com, and if you're looking for me on Twitter, at jguesman or at Galaxy podcast. All right, I think that about does it for our show for tonight. The LA Galaxy play on Wednesday, the LA Galaxy play on Sunday. We'll have full coverage from all of those games. So for Mr. Larry Morgan on Twitter, I'm Josh Guesman. You've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy from the Box podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast, and be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. And for all of your independent LA Galaxy news, discussion, and entertainment, including this podcast, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. Fans, thanks for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.